Hey everyone, it's your boy Paul here with another episode of
The Skooled Zone.
So when we last left off, we had read a couple of books and learned some really interesting information. Expanded our minds, you could say. Before we get into it, I wanted to come out here and check out this nice view and tell you that in the beginning of the last episode, I had mentioned some ways that I could improve the audio for this channel. And I went through 3 things that I think really helped. But one of the things I didn't realize until I got into editing is the direction of the microphone. So the Blue Yeti is a cardioid microphone, and like all microphones that have that setting, it sort of looks like an upside down heart shape. And that is the distance pattern from the microphone that collects your voice and collects sound, any ambient sound as well. But it's such a precise pattern that if you move your head away from that little vocal range there, it will create some differing sounds, you could say. So what I realized I was doing in the last episode was I was turning my head towards the microphone when I was speaking off the top of my head and then turning it back to the video when I was playing the game. And that was kind of creating sort of a modulation sound in my voice. I'll give you an example. So right now I'm talking directly at the microphone and you can hear how my voice sounds. Now I'm going to turn my head away from the microphone and you'll hear a little bit of a difference. So right now I'm basically speaking at the same volume I was before, but you can notice that there is a little bit of a difference in sound. And then I'm going to say something and turn my head back towards the microphone, and you'll hear what I mean about the modulation there. Hello. Hello. So that was a little lesson learned. And if any of you out there are starting YouTube channels, that's a good little pointer for you. I always like to be as helpful as possible to not only expand your mind, but your vocation as well. All right, so we are going to pick up here where we left off and just take a quick look around here, see if there's anything interesting to school. Okay, so up here, this is what they call a block and tackle. Actually, I'm going to go into detail about how a block and tackle works in Tomb Raider, which is the next game I'm going to school after the Dishonored DLC. Block and tackle is actually part of the gear that you get, so it'll make more sense in the context of that game. So I think there was one more book we didn't get to in here. So let's see what that has to say. I think it's one of the interesting ones about space and other dimensions. Call to the Spheres, Volume 1. An excerpt from a work of fiction, early chapters. My stomach twisted as the engines of the old vessel roared louder. It was the creation of Orcado, 3rd Prefect from the Academy of Natural Philosophy. So a prefect is like a head supervisor of a department. He was exhilarated, savoring each of the small craft's undulations. An undulation is a wavy motion or a swaying vibration. Orcado pulled a lever and a great gout of smoke surrounded us. Gout is actually a type of joint inflammation, but in this context, I think he's meaning a spurt of smoke. The smell of burning whale oil grew unbearable as the machine propelled itself upward. I was too afraid to look through the window, which suddenly didn't feel thick enough, as if, knowing my thoughts, Overseer Bryn looked at me and smiled. Recite some of the litany, my pupil. It will protect your heart from the turpitude of the void. Turpitude means something that is vile or wicked. On our way to the outer spheres. So, outer spheres used to be a term they used for other planets, but in this case, I think he means other dimensions. It sounds like what he's talking about is some kind of rocket ship that can either travel into outer space or into other dimensions. Interesting stuff. Okay. So we are going to head down to Piero's lab. And see what interesting things await us there. Oh, hey there, buddy. I'm just going to hop in your window here and I'm going to actually take a peek at your little book, too. Whale oil processing. Excerpt from the founder of the Greaves Whale House by Ebenezer Greaves. Out at sea, they secure the beast with hooks, with lines cast from the main ship and from several smaller boats. Buoys keep the whale from diving deep. Once it's caught, a larger hook is driven through the tail, which is used to hoist the creature up through the chute. Ouch. They moan and bellow for some time as the men get them onto the deck, then heft them into the scaffolding overhead. A scaffold is like an elevated platform or a frame that supports something heavy. The ship adjusts its prow, which I think is another name for the bow of a ship or the front end, and returns to port in Dunwall, where the crew works on the great creature, slicing off the fattiest parts while it still lives. Oh, that's heinous. And actually, that's a little foreshadowing to the first mission in the Knife of Dunwall DLC. So, let's keep going. Probably more whale stuff here. Yep, whale vivisection. Alright, let's see what this gruesome book has to say. Excerpt from the notes of a natural philosopher aboard a whaling ship. Remarkably, each specimen I had the pleasure of studying during the voyage possessed some minor variance in physiology, which is the branch of biology that deals with living things and their organs. On the second leg of the trip, east of Tivia, the crew hauled aboard a female, some 42 feet in length. I estimated she weighed 35 tons, and the ship sat low, rocking side to side through the night with her thrashing. By candlelight, I took her apart, sketching and taking notes. After her bellowing, I cut into the massive tentacles around her mouth. Within, I found row upon row of teeth, a baleen running along the upper jaw. So whales basically have these sieves in their mouth that catch food. That's a baleen, which can look like tentacles described above, but they're actually made of the same type of thing your fingernails are made of, called keratin. You'll hear them talk later about whalebone, but they're probably talking about these fibers of the whale's mouth because they're easy to carve. Through this broom-like structure, I assumed she filtered food from the water that was too small to be chewed. Alright, so that sounds very unpleasant. So, let's keep checking this stuff out here. Dead counter responsibilities. Excerpt from a manual on new city watch procedures. Commissioned by the Lord Regent in the face of the growing plague crisis, the dead counter is a position that will only be given to officers, usually of junior or middle grades, in most matters of edict, which means a command or law that's put into place, or curfew enforcement. These officers will defer to the acting officer on duty. However, any dead counter will have command in situations related to the plague and the handling of the dead, including those with late-stage plague symptoms, called weepers in common parlance, which means like lingo or jargon. Starting in the month of rain, interested officers may apply for the test, and if accepted, for the 2-week training tour. Pay will be administered in coin and rations of elixir at 1.5 normal pay grade. So we'll see some dead counters in an upcoming episode, throwing some corpses into the river. Alright, let's keep going. Oh, there's a book under here. Failed Experiments. Let's check it out. Excerpt from a series of lectures on natural philosophy by Piero Joplin. Of course, I have attempted to improve on Sokolov's designs. Of course, and why not? After all, it is likely that his thinking was influenced in some small way by our time together at the Academy. We are all part of a community striving to unknot the mysteries of the cosmos. Even those among us who possess the greatest minds are often led to a fruitful line of consideration by, how does one say it, our intellectual subordinates. Sokolov is no exception to this, despite the glamour of genius he has cast over the aristocracy, which is like the royalty, or in this case maybe the heads of the literati. And further, it is true that many of my experiments have failed. No need to gossip about it behind my back in your social clubs and in the very chambers of the Academy itself. Sounds like he's got some trolls. Great ambition requires risks. You may laugh now at my door to nowhere, but someday you will not. Your children will likely see it as commonly as you see the electric lamps lighting our streets at night. But a few short years ago, you would have laughed at Sokolov's arc pylon or wall of light. Your laughter, your condescending smiles, they are nothing but evidence of your own limited imagination. Okay. Hate is gonna hate, and he's not taking it too well. So it sounds like Piero and Sokolov have a little professional rivalry going on. Oh, and speaking of the door to nowhere, check this out. So this isn't just a smudge on the wall. There's a little note up here. Let's check it out. The door to nowhere has proven to be a safety hazard, but for me, this project is an endless source of inspiration. With the proper application of energies, I believe I can transform the door frame into a window of sorts, one that will allow a traveler to cover the distance from my workshop to some distant arbitrary point in a single step. Currently, the step leads to a sheer drop straight down into the courtyard, but in time it will bridge gaps that will boggle the mind. Such work is many years away, to be sure, but if I survive the plague, I'm sure to succeed. Have you guys ever played the game Portal? To me, that sort of looks like the Portal logo. I don't know if the companies that made these two games are related or if someone in the development team just threw in a little homage, but it's interesting. Who knows, maybe in a Dishonored sequel you'll be able to blink through walls after Piero masters his little pet project here. Alright, so another block and tackle. Alright, so let's check out this note right here. This is Piero's request is denied. Piero, no, I will not sign off on these purchases. A bag of powdered crystal, Tivian ore? What's wrong with the metals and crystal? King sparrow feathers? If you need feathers, sacrifice your own pillow. Maybe at the... And by the way, pillows used to be made of feathers. Some still are, actually. Maybe at the academy, everything you needed was paid for by tariff and handed out willy-nilly. A tariff is basically a tax, but usually for like imports or exports. But this is my bar, or what's left of it, and we're operating on a budget. We're running low on oil, food, elixir, building materials, and everything else, so you've got to slow down. While I'm footing the bill, I will not approve your purchases unless they are absolutely required. No more copper wire or special herbs. If you need these things, go out and scavenge them. Half the city is in ruins, so no one is going to miss any of the odd crap you seem to need. Admiral Havelock. Alright then. Let's hear what this audiograph player has to say.
Does part of the soul live in the heart? If the heart keeps beating, does that mean that the spirit is never released into oblivion? I can keep a heart beating forever with electricity, but what does that mean for any essence trapped within? It'd be easier if I created these processes in waking hours. I am uneasy pursuing avenues that emanate from my dreaming mind.
Alright, so sounds a little Frankensteinish there. Okay, let's see what else we got around here. Neat. Alright, so grindstones are usually made of sandstone and they're used for sharpening metal tools. This actually looks like an electric rotary grindstone, which wasn't developed until right around the late 19th century, pretty much when Dishonored takes place. And here we have a vise. Mechanical vices date back to the 18th century, but a bolted bench vise like this wasn't patented until 1925. But that doesn't mean someone didn't come up with it first, decades before, and just never patented, so we can assume Piero is ahead of his time. Alright. Star chart, southern skies. Okay, so this is the Pandician continent here, and it looks like way up here are the isles, and they're sort of magnified right here. And you can see Bristol right here, which is where the Dishonored game takes place. And Corvo supposedly from the one down here. Circono. And, yeah, but this leaves a lot of room for sequels. Hopefully they'll come out with one. I really like this game. Alright, so let's see what else we have here. Grab these little medicinal herbs. We don't need... Oh yeah, we do need health. And what's this book? Second Solution. Let's check it out. Excerpt from a series of newspaper articles from prominent natural philosophers by Piero. It is through no fault of my own that the average citizen has expressed a preference for Sokolov's elixir over my own formula, sold as Piero's remedy, a name I did not choose if you must know the truth. The public has spoken its usual message of idiocy, spending their coin as a means of selecting Sokolov's formula over mine, which I believe to be equal if not superior. Much has been made over the popularity of these concoctions as a means of resisting this remarkable new plague. I say remarkable because this strain works with an efficiency we have not seen in the history of the Empire. Sounds like a bioengineered virus, maybe. This plague, now making its way through the city of Dunwall, is unrivaled in its effectiveness. I have studied it within the blood of those afflicted, and it is nearly perfect, elegant, in fact. And while it is true that Pierre's remedy and Sokolov's elixir are known to protect the body against the plague equally, my own has properties not fully understood which relate to the mind itself and the spirit, and it is this way that my formula wins out. Here is where one should pay attention to this contest, for you see, Sokolov's elixir, with its emphasis on the brute animal body, is a cross goo better suited for livestock. The subtle and secret variants in the key ingredients making up Pierre's remedy ensure that it works better on the higher functions that separate humankind from the mindless blue-jawed hagfish swimming in the Wrenhaven River. This brings up an interesting discussion about the mind-body debate, which was popularized by René Descartes. His question about consciousness versus matter launched an entire branch of philosophy. So what do you guys think? Is the mind separate from the body, or are thoughts only chemicals in the brain? I'm kind of interested. Leave a comment in the After School Club. I'm curious as to what you guys think about that. Okay, so we've pretty much covered all of Piero's lab. Grab a little copper wire. Not much left to school around here. Blood from the eyes. Because that's one of the symptoms of the plague. You cannot kill the rat plague. The Lord Regent is a shriveled prick and a liar. Alright, guess they had graffiti going way back. So what we're going to do next is grab some more items from around the courtyard and then go in and grab all the items from the pub and talk about some interesting little factoids that we find along the way. So once again, well, let's see what she has to say real quick.
I had a sailor for a boyfriend once. He thought he'd strike gold digging in the Pandician cliffs. They found his ship drifting empty.
He doesn't sound too torn up about that. Yeah, so we'll take a look in the pub and do all that in the next session.